Let's bring Sam Carchidi from the Inquirer, Philly.com, into the mix as the Flyers have had what a whirlwind of 72 hours here, Sam.
It's been a crazy week, and it'll be good to see a hockey game tonight and to get away from the soap opera that's been the Flyers. It's just been one thing after another, and I think the players I think they feel the same way. They just want to play a game and start this new era. Not only a new era, of course, for Carter Hart, as you mentioned, but for Scott Gordon, and a lot of these guys are familiar with Gordon, and they seem comfortable with him. So anxious to see how they perform tonight and moving forward.
Sam, did you get a sense when you were in Western Canada with the team? I mean, a lot of people talk about how bad that trip was, some bad efforts, some bad losses. Did you get the sense that something was going to have to happen or was about to happen?
Yeah, well, I actually tweeted out, I guess it was after they fell behind 3-0 to Vancouver, that it felt like this was the last game that Dave Hakstol would coach. It just seemed that way, and it turned out that way. I mean, it's almost like Groundhog Day, and the mistakes kept repeating themselves, and Hakstol was a hard worker, and give him credit for trying to implement a lot of different things, but the message, for whatever reason, just was not getting through. They fell behind early in most games, not only this year, but in past years. They got off to slow starts to the season, not only this year, but in past years. And the special teams, have been abysmal. And that's happened throughout his 4 years here, especially with the penalty kill. This year, the power play, is 29th in the league. And you look at the guys on the power play, the guys are usually in the top 10 in the whole league in points on the power play. Guys like Wayne Simmons and Claude Giroux and James Van Riemsdyk. I mean, this power play unit is just not clicking. They're 29th out of 31 teams. So when you put all that together, I think you could really sense that the end was coming near.
Sam Carchidi covers the Flyers. He's with us here on the Boardwalk on the hotline. So do you think there was just a disconnect between the players and Hextall? Was he just not a good communicator? Was he in over his head? I mean, this was kind of abnormal to have a guy go from college to the pros, but, I mean, he was entering his fourth season. I mean, did he just not grasp or learn the NHL ropes as well as maybe some would hope?
Well, Chuck Fletcher, the new GM, called it a disconnect, and he's only been here a couple of weeks, but he sensed a disconnect between Hextall and the players, and it just seemed like they had tuned him out. And I don't know if it's because he came from college. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. He didn't pay his dues. Maybe he didn't earn the respect. But the players have to take some of the responsibility, a lot of the responsibility, and to their credit, a lot of them did. And they said the onus is on us. We didn't perform, we didn't do what we were supposed to. But to answer your question, there was a disconnect. The players just, they just seem to go through the motions in a lot of periods and games. You didn't know what kind of team you were going to see from not only game to game, but period to period. You would see an all-out onslaught, an offensive attack in one period, and the next period you'd see 3 shots. I mean, the great teams are consistent night in and night out. And, this Flyers team, they had 98 points last year and added Van Riemsdyk. And when you look at the young players, you figured they would take another step this year, the Provorovs, the Gossas Bears, the Konechnys, and the Patricks. So you thought they would, improve on last year. But instead, most of the young players have regressed. And, as a result, they're where they're at, 16th out of 16 teams in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, now going with their struggles or inconsistencies, up and downs on offense, Nolan Patrick, I want your thoughts on him. And he's playing on a line tonight that consists of G and TK. So what do you think that's going to do potentially for their scoring tonight?
Yeah, I mean, he's at a crisis, Nolan Patrick. I talked to him today at the morning skate, and, he says, it's on me. I got to be better. The last 2 games, he's been a little better, but, he's got 1 point in the last 14 games, 1 point, no goals, and he says he's healthy. That's the first thing you check with these guys because we really thought he would take a step. I thought he'd be a 20-goal scorer this year, and he still may be. But I just think they're playing with so much tension, and it just, you can see the body language out there. And when something goes wrong, the whole team just falls apart. I think the coaching change is going to take away some of that tension, and I think they can relax, breathe a little bit, and I think you'll see better hockey from all the guys, not just Nolan Patrick.
So the timeline's kind of interesting here because obviously Sunday there was a report that Hextall was going to be out and that Quenneville was going to be in. The team really didn't comment much on it. Monday, now I saw that you tweeted that, the intention was that Hextall thought he was going to be running practice on Monday. So this thing got a little murky somewhere between Sunday and his firing. Was the intention that he was going to be fired, or was it, hey, there's a report out there that I'm going to be fired. I need you guys to kind of give me some, tell me where I stand. And at that point, they just decided to cut bait?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. He went in there and said that, hey, it's difficult enough to coach without this hanging over my head. I need a vote of confidence. It's hard for me to get a message to the players, and I need some guarantees I'm going to be here for the rest of the year. And they basically said we can't guarantee that. And, one thing led to the other, and they just decided, hey, we better cut ties right now. And but surprisingly, they did not go into Monday because I talked to somebody behind the scenes and asked if there was a press conference Monday, and they said, no, he will be on the ice. This is a high-ranking official with the Flyers. They said he'll be on the ice at practice. There's no press conference scheduled. And this was early in the day, probably like 10 o'clock. And, by 12:30, they went on the ice at 12:30. Hextall was not on the ice, and he usually is, of course, during practice, and kind of thought, hey, something may be up here. There was a time, I'd say about 2 weeks ago, he was not out there either. He had something else to attend to. So, you weren't quite sure if it was something else. But, somebody alerted me that, hey, something's going to happen. Stay tuned because in the next 15 minutes we're going to have an announcement. And sure enough, it came down close to 1 o'clock, I guess. And so the Flyers practiced without their head coach that day, and the assistants took over. It's been a soap opera, as I said. Scott Gordon was here today. He would have been at practice actually yesterday if he knew ahead of time, but there was no intention of actually firing him that day. I think they wanted to just give him a little more time, but the way it came out, he wanted an answer, and there were no guarantees, and they decided to cut ties. So actually today was the first day that Scott Gordon was there, and we talked to him this morning, and he said he's going to implement some different things, some different systems, but he's going to go very slowly. He said he doesn't want to overwhelm anybody, and he's got to get to know the personnel. Luckily, he knows a lot of the personnel. There are 11 players on the team, including the injured guys that he had with the Phantoms. He also had Andrew MacDonald when he coached the Islanders, and he also had James Van Riemsdyk when he was an assistant coach with Toronto. So he has some familiarity, so that will help. But as far as new systems, new power play, new penalty kill, he's going to go slow in implementing his system. It's going to take some time. But as I said, I think just a new voice here will take some of the pressure that's really been hanging over the Flyers. They've been really a tight team, and I think this should loosen them up a little bit.
Sam Carchidi is with us from the Inquirer, Philly.com, at Broad Street Brule on Twitter. The Quenneville stuff kind of came out, and then I guess Fletcher had said, look, I haven't talked to the guy in a couple of years, which, I think you tweeted out the other day that Quenneville really doesn't want to get back into coaching or even think about it until after the holidays. So is the Quenneville stuff, in your opinion, dead, or will that be revisited maybe Wednesday, next Wednesday?
No, it's not. To answer your question, is it dead? No, absolutely not. Will it be revisited during the season? I don't think it will. I think the intention right now is to have Scott Gordon coach for the rest of the year. But Quenneville, there's no question, Quenneville is high on their list. Here's a guy. How often do you have a guy with 3 Stanley Cup championship rings? And what he has done with his resume available. I mean, it just doesn't happen. Quenneville's not sure when he wants to get back in it. But I've talked to some people in the front office, and they actually had discussions with Ron Hextall when Hextall was still here, and Quenneville became available. They had discussions with him and said, what do you think? Quenneville is out there. And the quote from Hextall that I'm told, he said, I want to stay the course, which means he was the biggest Dave Hakstol supporter, I think, to a fault, actually. And you can understand his loyalty because, he took a risk by hiring out of college and rolled the dice. He's like only the 3rd player to go directly from college to the NHL as a head coach. And he really swore by him. But the fact that they mentioned Quenneville and Ron wanted to stay the course tells me that the people upstairs, Dave Scott, Paul Holmgren, they definitely have Quenneville on their radar. And I think they will revisit it after the season. But then again, if Scott Gordon does, in essence, he has a 51-game tryout. If he leads his team to the playoffs and they win a round or two, Scott Gordon, I think, will remain as the head coach. So, in essence, as I said, this is an interview, a 3-month interview for him, and his players are going to decide whether he stays or whether they go for somebody like Joel Quenneville or somebody else.
So Carter Hart will make his debut. He will be the 6th goaltender to play before Christmas. It's only happened, I think the Blues back in 02-03 had the same problem. A lot of this is due to injury. We know the Flyers' history of poor goaltending. So is Carter Hart here tonight out of necessity, or are they ready to turn the page and that Hextall was not? Is this front office ready to see the future now, or is this out of necessity?
No, it's more out of necessity, Mike. It's I talked yesterday to Chuck Fletcher about that, and I said, is the plan to keep him here until Elliott comes back at least? Elliott's probably going to get back for at least 2 or 3 weeks, and he said we don't know yet. It's a game by game, it's a week by week. We'll see. And the translation is, if Carter Hart plays really well over the next first few starts, he's going to stay here. But if he doesn't, he'll probably go back down. I mean, experience. Some people are all upset saying that you're going to ruin his confidence having him play in front of that shoddy defense. I don't think so. I think any kind of experience is something he can build on. This is a smart kid. This is a kid who's had a sports psychologist since he's 11 or 12 years old. He's so focused, and is he ready for the NHL? Nobody knows. Scott Gordon said that today. Scott Gordon, of course, had him with the Phantoms, and he said, I don't know if he's ready. He said, Hexie came to me last month and asked me my opinion. I said, he's absolutely not ready right now. And this is like 3 or 4 weeks ago. But he said his last 5 starts, things have changed. He's improved. His deficiencies are not what they were, and he's just a much smarter player, and he's picked up things, and his rebound control is better. So that's only 5 starts. So I don't know if you turn the season around in 5 starts, but you look at numbers, and the last 5 starts are really good. Yeah. So but he thinks he at least deserves a shot. And I think today's a perfect game for him. You're playing a team that's not one of the best teams in the league, a mediocre Detroit team. It's not like you're throwing him to the wolves against a Nashville, who they play later in the week, or a Tampa Bay or somebody like that. He can ease his way in, and let's see what he's got. And we all know the Flyers need a positive right about now, and the players are excited to play in front of him too. So I'm anxious to see how things turn out.
That game tonight, 7 o'clock, 97.3 ESPN, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Sam Carchidi, kind enough to jump on board, which I know has been a wild couple of days in the travel, the Western Canada, and then coming back home. A hockey game tonight. Flyers and Red Wings. Sam, thanks so much, pal.
I appreciate it, Mike. Have
And
a
don't
good night.
forget Sam's book, by the way, If These Walls Could Talk. The holiday season is here. Make sure you check that out at Broad Street Bull on Twitter. You can get more information about Sam Carchidi's book with Lou Nolan. If These Walls Could Talk is the book. It's perfect for the Flyers fan in your life this Christmas season.